Chapter 4. Froze Up Southern Folks. Because she'd been born in Alabama, Mama didn't really know anything about the cold. Even though she lived in Flint for 15 years, she thought the cold weather could kill you in a flash. That's why me and Joey were the warmest kids at Clark Elementary School. Mama wouldn't let us go out on a cold winter day unless we were wearing a couple of t-shirts, a couple of sweaters, a couple of jackets, a couple of coats, plus gigantic snow pants that hung on your shoulders by suspenders, plus socks and big, black, shiny rubber boots that closed with 5 buckles. We wore so many clothes that when we pulled our final coat on, we could hardly bend our arms, or barely bend our arms. We wore so many clothes that when Byron wasn't around, the other kids said stuff like, "Here come some of those weird Watsons doing their mummy imitations." But the worst part of all of this was having to take all that stuff off once we got to school. It was my job to make sure Joey got out of her coats and things okay. So after I took all of my junk off, I went down to the kindergartners and started working on hers. Joey usually looked like a little zombie while I peeled her coats and jackets off her. She got so hot inside all this stuff that when I finally got down to the last layer, she was soaking wet and kind of drowsy looking. I took her hood off and unwrapped her last scarf that was around her head. When the last scarf came off, there was always a real nice smell, like Joey was a little oven inside all those clothes. She baked up her own special perfume. With that smell of shampoo and soap and on the pomade Mama put on her hair. That was the only part I didn't mind. I love sticking my nose right on top of Joey's head and smelling all those nice things baked together. Mama always kept a little towel in Joey's last jacket pocket so I could make sure her face and her hair were dry. "Kenny," she said one time while I wiped the sweat from her forehead and hair, "can't you do something to stop Mama from making us get so hot?" "I tried, Joey. Mama thinks she's protecting us from the cold." I started trying to get Joey's shoes out of her boots. Whoever invented these boots should be shot, because once the boots got a hold of your shoes, they wouldn't let them go for anything. I pulled everything off Joey's foot and gave her the boot while I reached inside and to tug out the shoe. We pulled and pulled, but it seemed like the harder we pulled, the harder that boot sucked in that shoe back in. Maybe Byron will help make Mommy stop if we let him know how hot we get. Joey was too young to understand that Byron didn't care about anything but himself. He was kind of nice to her, though, and didn't treat her like he treated me and the other kids. We tugged, and the shoe started coming out an inch at a time, and finally it made that funny sound like water going through the drain and slid out of the boot. Phew! I tied Joey's shoes back on her feet, used a towel to wipe her own forehead. I couldn't wait until I was old enough to not listen to what Mama told me. The next morning, Mama was burying Joey in all of her clothes again. Joey was doing the usual whining and complaining. "Mommy, can't I wear just one jacket? I get too hot. Besides, when I wear all this junk, I'm the laughing stock of the morning kindergarten." Mama's hand came up over her mouth, but she got serious when she said, "Joey, I don't want you to be the laughing stock, but I don't want you catching a cold. You got to keep bundled up and out there. It's colder than you think. This cold is very dangerous. People die in it all the time." Joey pouted and said, "Well, if they die in it all the time, then how come we don't see any frozen people when we go to school?" Mama gave Joey a funny look and pulled her hood over her head. "Sweetheart, just do what Mommy says. It's better just to be too warm than too cold," Joey whined. A little more than Mama put her boots on. Me and Byron went outside and waited on the porch. He was trying to look cool, but I said to him anyway, "Man, I hate taking all that stuff off Joey. When we get to school, she whines and cries the whole time." I stood next to him and looked at him sideways. Seems to me like you got a real bad memory. Who do you think took all that stuff off your little behind all these years? What goes around comes around. I was surprised he said anything, since Byron thought it was cool not to answer stuff when someone younger than you said it. But he wasn't being completely nice. When I was talking about he kept moving around, so if I wanted to look at him sideways, I'd have to move too. It must have looked like we were doing some kind of square dance, with me moving around like a foot was like my foot was nailed to the porch. Yeah, but I didn't cry and whine. Byron kept circling me and putting his hand behind my ear. What? I know you didn't say what I think you said. You were the cryest little clown there ever was. With Byron walking around me like that, we must have looked like we were wild in the Wild West. I was a wagon train and Byron was the Indian circling, waiting to attack. Byron changed directions and started going around the other way. I acted like my other foot was nailed to the porch, and I started following him sideways that way. I knew there wasn't much point in saying a whole bunch more to him, so I said mostly to myself, man, I hate listening to Joey whining when I take all that junk off school. Well, listen here, he said. I'ma help you out. I know it's kind of stupid to think that someone who's teasing you and going around you in circles is going to help you out. But I said, anyway, how? He kept going round and round me. I bet we looked like the solar system, with me being the sun and Byron being the orbiting Earth. I'll talk to Joey. Kind of put her mind at ease. This isn't sounding too good. And I got sick of Bye teasing me, so I let the Earth orbit itself. Joey finally came out, and the three of us walked down towards the bus stop. Byron started right in. Baby sis, I know you don't like wearing all them clothes, right? Right, Byron, they get too hot. Yeah, I'm hip, but you don't know there's a good reason why you gotta have all that stuff on. Why? Only me and Kenny wear this much junk. Yeah, but what you don't know is that Mama's only doing what's right. There's something she don't want you to know yet. But I know, and you some real mature kids. I'ma tell you anyways. Okay, tell us. I wanted you to know, too. Even though I was in 4th grade, I fell for a lot of stuff Byron came up with. He made everything seem real interesting and real important. All right. But Mama finally do tell you guys this stuff. You gotta act like surprised. Deal? Both me and Joey said, deal. Byron looked around to make sure no one was listening. Have you ever noticed early in the morning, some of the time you wake up and hear garbage trucks? Yeah. And have you ever noticed that when you get up and you get to school, you almost never see them trucks? Well, yeah. And have you ever noticed that when you do see one of them trucks, it got a real big door in the back of it and opens and shuts so you can't see what's inside? Yeah. And have you ever noticed how the door is too big even for the biggest garbage can in the whole world? Well, yeah. And Joey, did you notice how Mama got kind of nervous and didn't answer your question about seeing people being froze up in the street? Yeah. Byron looked around and made her get real close to him. Okay. This is the part you're gonna have to look surprised when Mama tells you about it. But before I tell you, you're gonna have to practice acting surprised so I don't get in trouble for letting you know, okay? Yeah, Kenny, you first. I made my eyes get real big and threw my mouth open. Not bad, but try it with some sound. I made my eyes real big and threw my mouth open and went, what the? Perfect. Baby sis, your turn. Joey did exactly what I did. That's good. But I think we need some action. Do all that stuff now and throw up your arms just like you heard something real shocking and stuff. And we did. Cool, now do it together. 3 times, go. Me and Joey did it 3 times, but Byron said, listen real careful. He looked around to make sure the coast was clear. There's a good reason Mama makes you wear all them clothes, and it's got to do with them big doors in the back of that garbage truck, you dig? Me and Joey nodded our heads the best we could with all of our clothes on. You see, some of these trucks ain't real garbage trucks at all, Joey. You was right. Every cold morning, like these streets are full of dead frozen people. Some of them, this time, they freeze so quick that they don't even fall down. They just stand there, frozen solid. Joey was believing every word. I wasn't too sure. But you notice that not everybody gets froze like that. It's just them folks from down south who get that thin, down-home blood, who freeze so quick. And you know Mama ain't from Flint. She grew up in Alabama. That means half your all blood is real thin. So Mama's worried that in the morning it's going to be cold enough to freeze y'all. That's what them fake garbage trucks come in every morning, and they go around picking up frozen folks off the street, and they need them big doors because some people who got froze don't bend in the middle, and they wouldn't fit in the regular ambulance. Joey looked at like she was hypnotized. Her mouth was open and her eyes were bugging. Both of you gotta swear never, never, never to tell and look back at one of them trucks. I did it once. I'ma tell you, there ain't nothing more horrible than seeing hundreds of cold, frozen Southern folks crammed up in a garbage truck. It's a sight that I'ma carry to the grave with me. So, Joey, don't be crying and whining when you put all them clothes on. It would break my heart to see my own family froze solid so they've got thrown into one of those fake garbage trucks. Joey started crying. Byron told me, give my regards to Clark, Poindexter, and left me there to wipe Joetta's tears. I've got to admit, Joey didn't do any more whining when she got there into her winter clothes. The only good thing about Mama being afraid of the cold was that we were the only kids at Clark Elementary who got to wear real leather gloves. Most of the other kids had to wear cheap plastic mittens that would start to crack up after 2 or 3 snowball fights or one real cold day. Some of them had to wear socks on their hands. Some of them just had to scrunch up their arms and their sleeves and their jackets. But Mama made sure we got real leather gloves and real rabbit's fur in the middle inside them. And I'm not bragging, but we go through 2 pairs a year each. At the end of every winter, Mama and Dad would go downtown to Montgomery Ward's, and when the gloves were going to be on sale, and they buy 6 pairs for us kids. The only problem with having 2 pairs of gloves was that if you lost one pair, you had to wear the next pair kindergarten style. That meant Mama would run a string through the sleeves in your coat and tie 2 safety pins in the string, so it was impossible to lose your gloves because every time you took them off, they'd be hanging from your coat. I pulled the trick on Mama to help Rufus. For a while, I shared my first pair of gloves with him. I'd keep the right-hand glove, and he'd keep the left-hand one, and that way we both could get snowball fights. Instead of Rufus scrunching up both hands in his sleeves, I'd scrunch up one of mine, and he'd scrunch up one of his. That was okay for a while, but then I figured that if I told Mama I'd lost my first pair, she'd give me the second one to me, and me and Rufus could each have a full pair of gloves. It worked. Mama put the second pair on my coat kindergarten style and warned me, this is the last one, Kenny. After this, you won't have anything for the rest of the year, so be very careful. I just about broke out laughing when she held me by the arms and looked right in my eyes and said, do you know what a frostbite will do to you? Yes, Mama. I looked sad on the outside, but on the inside I was feeling great. I gave Rufus the right-hand glove, and everything was fine for about a week. That's when my second pair of gloves, the kindergarten string safety pins and all, disappeared out of the closet at school. Rufus had to let me borrow one of the old gloves back, and we were back to scrunching up our hands. Each owner of the glove, we got to keep the right hand on, and I had to wear the left hand one. 2 days later, Larry Dunn stopped wearing socks on his hands and started wearing a pair of real leather gloves with real rabbit fur on the inside them. The only difference between my old gloves and Larry's new ones was that mine had been thrown on Larry's, or mine had been brown and Larry's were black. Me and Rufus found this out when Larry ran up behind us and said, "This Friday, y'all time to do the laundry? Who's going to be first, Country Cornflake or Cockeye Kenny?" He didn't wait for us to make up our minds and grabbed me first. He said to Rufus, "If you run away during Cockeye's wash, I'ma hunt you down and I'ma hurt you bad, boy. This ain't gonna take a minute. Just stick around." Rufus stood there looking worried. Larry wasn't like other bullies. He wasn't happy just talking or taking a handful of snow and smashing it in your face and running off. Nope, Larry would give what he called the Maytag wash. With a Maytag wash, you had to go through all of the different cycles that the washing machine did. And even though when Larry gave you a Maytag, all of the cycles were exactly the same, each part had a different name, and the wash wasn't done until you went through the final spin and had snow in every part of your face. Ever since Larry had gotten the new gloves, he was giving super Maytag washes because he could grind the whole lot more snow in your face and a whole lot longer since his hands weren't getting cold. Larry was tearing me up. I was crying even before the first rinse cycle was done, and he finally let me go. After he washed Rufus, we started walking home. Rufus said, "Man, he stole your gloves." Who didn't know this, but couldn't prove this? And besides, my old gloves were brown and Larry's new ones were black. "Uh-huh, mine were brown," I said. Rufus dug a chunk of snow out of his pocket and said, "Look." The snow was covered with black. So was all of the snow I pulled out of my outer coat. Larry Dunn had stolen my gloves and then painted them black with shoe polish. I didn't know what to do. Sooner or later, Mama was going to find out. I only had one glove, and ever since I'd found out that half-blood of mine was Southern, that kind of started me wonder about frostbite. I really could do some damage to my hands. I couldn't help myself. I sat on the curb and sniffed a couple of times and then finally cried. Rufus knew this was some real embarrassing stuff, so he sat down beside me, looked the other way, and acted like he didn't see me crying. That's how come we didn't see Bi and Bumphead walking up on us. I was too busy looking down, trying not to be too obvious about crying, and Rufus was busy pretending he didn't notice that I was. "What you crying about, punk?" I made a mistake of telling Byron about my gloves and Larry Dunn. "Where's he at?" "Washing kids' faces over by the school." "Come on." Me and Rufus followed Bi and Bumphead over to Clark. Larry Dunn was giving Super Maytags to the 5th graders, and Byron interrupted the final rinse cycle and said, "Let me see them gloves." Larry Dunn said, "I ain't," but Bi snatched Larry Dunn's windbreaker with one hand and touched his own mouth with the other hand. "Bumphead, I thought for sure when I got up this morning that my lips were working fine, and now they feel like they seem like they're moving just right. But if they're working fine, how come this little fool isn't doing what I told him to do?" Bumphead shrugged and said, "Maybe that boy's ears is bad. Maybe maybe I have to use deaf people language to talk to him. Maybe I have to walk up to him like the woman in The Miracle Worker." All the weird Watsons had seen the show together, and that way they talked to deaf people in the movie wasn't anything the way Byron was talking to Larry Dunn. Byron's style of deaf language was just to tell real loud and slap the side of Larry's head after each word. "Let me, whack, see, whack, them, whack, gloves, whack, young, whack, fool, whack, 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 whack." This had to be killing Larry Dunn. Larry didn't cry or anything. He just stared at By and said, He talked real tough, but he didn't do a thing when Byron snatched those gloves off his hands. The palms of the gloves were brown, and the backs were black. Byron threw me the gloves. Here, Kenny. Thanks, By. That would have been fine with me, but Byron wasn't through. Come here, Kenny. I went and stood where Byron still had the neck of Larry Dunn's skinny little windbreaker wadded up in his fist. Pop him, Byron said. I gave Larry Dunn a slap on the arm. I'm going to tell you one more time. Pop him. I hit Larry a little harder. I hoped he'd bend over and act like it killed him, but he stood there trying to look cool. Byron kept his word and only told me one more time. Then, when I didn't hit Larry hard enough, he punched me in the stomach hard. I didn't even feel it because all those sweaters and jackets and coats, but I had more sense than Larry. I acted like I'd been popped like Sugar Ray Robinson and staggered back and fell on my knees holding my stomach. I said, ugh. A little crowd of kids started bunching up around us, and Byron decided it was time to put on a show. I don't know why bullies always have such a good sense of humor, but they do. Unless you were the one that was in the machine. You probably think that Larry Dunn's Maytag washes were pretty funny. And unless it was your jacket that he was balled up in Byron's fist with a crowd of kids bunching around, you'd have to say it was pretty funny too. I knew Byron wasn't trying to help me anymore. He was just being mean. Well, Mr. Dunn, By said, today's your lucky day. He dragged Larry over to the chain link fence and went all the way around Clark. You want to know why you're lucky today? Larry Dunn didn't say anything. Byron grabbed his hair, jerked his head up and down a couple times. I guess that means yes. The crowd of kids was getting bigger and bigger. He was loving this. Not because they wanted to see Larry Dunn get jacked up, but because they wanted to see anybody get it. They'd have been just as happy as if it was me or Rufus or someone else. Well, today's your lucky day, because I'm about to make a new movie, and guess what? You're going to be the star. Byron jerked Larry's arms over his head 3 times. Larry Dunn was really tough, but only because he wasn't crying when By was going to mess with him, but also because when Byron jerked his arms over his head like that, we all could see that Larry's skinny little windbreaker was ripped under both arms, and Larry had just on a t-shirt underneath. You'd have to be pretty tough to stand around giving people Maytags all day, as cold as it was and as thin with those skimpy little clothes on. I guess that means you're really excited about being in my flick, yeah? By said. But I got some even better news for you. By lifted Larry up in the air and threw him. Larry landed on his butt. Someone shouted, "Look at them shoes!" The crowd cracked up. Larry's Dunn tennis shoes had holes in the bottom, and he'd put pieces of cardboard boxes in them to cover up the holes. Byron snatched him back to his feet. Look at that. You're so excited about being in my movie that you're jumping for joy. Don't you even wait or want to know what the flick's about? Larry's head got jerked up and down again. Okay, it's called The Great Carp Escape. I hated watching this. Byron was the only person in the whole world who could make you feel sorry for someone as mean as Larry Dunn. The Great Carp Escape was a show about a carp that was trying to get away from the net in the Flint River. The stupid fish would run into the net and get knocked down, then get back up, run into the net all over again. Since he was the star, Larry Dunn had to play the carp, and the fence around Clark was the net, and the director of the movie was Byron. And Byron didn't like the way the scene was going. He made the carp redo it over and over again. Let's see a little more fins this time, carp, Byron would say, and then he'd throw Larry into the fence. Since tennis shoes don't have a lot of grip on the ice, Larry would go into the fence hard and couldn't control what part of him hit first. I knew it really had to hurt to catch yourself on that cold fence with nothing on your hands, not even socks. But Larry Dunn was real, real tough. He had a bloody nose, and he still didn't cry. I wish I hadn't told Byron what happened. I wish I would just have gone the rest of the year with one glove. I couldn't stand to see how the movie was going to end, so me and Rufus left. I could hear the jink jink sound of the carp hitting the net and the screams of laughter as the audience from half a block away.